Victoria Sterling stood in the charred remains of what had been her life's work, tears streaming down her soot-stained cheeks. Flame and Fork, the restaurant she had poured every penny and sleepless night into, was nothing but blackened walls and twisted metal. Electrical fire had consumed everything in mere hours, leaving behind only the acrid smell of destruction and shattered dreams. The insurance adjuster's words echoed in her mind like a death sentence. "I'm sorry, Miss Sterling, but the policy doesn't cover electrical fires caused by faulty wiring. It appears to be a pre-existing condition that wasn't disclosed." 6 months of her life, her grandmother's recipes, her life savings, all reduced to ash because of outdated wiring she never knew existed. Her phone buzzed with another notification. Another bill, another reminder of the debt that was drowning her. It's the suppliers, the loan payments, the rent on her tiny apartment. Everything was due, and she had nothing left to give. Victoria sank onto a piece of debris that had once been her chef's station, burying her face in her hands. "Victoria, honey, you can't stay here forever." Lena Rodriguez, her best friend since culinary school, approached carefully through the rubble. As a nurse at the city's most prestigious hospital, Lena had seen her share of tragedy, but watching her best friend's dreams literally go up in smoke was heartbreaking. "I don't know what else to do, Elena. The banks won't give me another loan. My credit is destroyed. I can't even afford groceries, let alone rebuild this place." Victoria's voice cracked with exhaustion and despair. Elena sat beside her friend, choosing her words carefully. "There might be something. It's unconventional. And you're probably going to hate me for even suggesting it, but hear me out." Victoria looked up with hollow eyes. "Unless you know someone willing to give me $500,000 with no strings attached, I don't think anything can help me now." "What if I told you someone is willing to give you $2 million? Lena's voice was barely above a whisper. "But there are strings, big ones." The proposal. Victoria stared at her friend in disbelief. "Elena, if this is some kind of joke, now really isn't the time. I'm completely serious. There's a patient at the hospital. Well, not exactly a patient. He owns half the medical wing. Adrian Blackwell. He's looking for someone to carry his child. Not adoption, not traditional surrogacy. He wants natural conception. One time with someone intelligent, healthy, and attractive. In exchange, he's offering $2 million. The words hit Victoria like physical blows. "You're suggesting I sell my body to some rich stranger for money?" "I'm suggesting you consider an option that could solve all your problems," Elena said gently. "Adrian Ison Blackwell isn't some creepy old man. He's 35. Incredibly successful, and from what I've observed, quite handsome. The arrangement would be completely professional, with legal contracts protecting both parties." Victoria stood abruptly, pacing through the debris. "This is insane. I can't just sleep with someone for money and carry his child. What kind of person does that make me?" "A survivor," Elena replied firmly. "A woman who refuses to let circumstances destroy her dreams." "Look around, Victoria. You have nothing left except your talent and your determination.
Oh.
This could give you the chance to rebuild, to create something even better than before." The rational part of Victoria's mind recoiled at the suggestion, but desperation was a powerful motivator. $2 million would not only rebuild her restaurant, but establish a culinary empire. She could honor her grandmother's memory and create the kind of legacy she had always dreamed of. "Tell me more about him," Victoria found herself saying, hating that she was even considering this impossible proposition. The meeting 3 days later, Victoria found herself in the opulent offices of Blackwell Technologies, her hands trembling as she smoothed her only professional dress. The building was a monument to success, all glass and steel reaching toward the clouds, making her feel smaller and more insignificant with each passing floor. James Morrison, Adrian's assistant, escorted her to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "Mr. Blackwell will join you momentarily. Can I offer you anything to drink?" "Water, please," Victoria managed, her mouth suddenly dry as sandpaper. When Adrian Blackwell entered the room, Victoria's breath caught in her throat. Elena hadn't been exaggerating about his appearance. He's tall and broad-shouldered. He moved with the confident grace of a man accustomed to commanding every room he entered. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and his steel gray eyes seemed to take in everything at once. He wore an impeccably tailored suit that probably cost more than Victoria had ever made in a month. "Miss Sterling," he said, extending his hand. His voice was deep and cultured, with just a hint of warmth beneath the professional exterior. "Thank you for coming. I trust James explained the basic parameters of what I'm proposing." Victoria shook his hand, surprised by the firmness of his grip and the unexpected calluses on his palms. Somehow, she had expected softer hands from a man who worked behind a desk. "He mentioned some of the details. Yes, though I have to admit, I'm still not entirely sure why I'm here." Adrian gestured for her to sit, taking the chair across from her rather than positioning himself behind the intimidating conference table. "You're here because you need something I can provide, and I need something you can give me. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement." "You make it sound like a business transaction," Victoria said, unable to keep the edge from her voice. Adrian's gaze was steady, unflinching. "I've done my research, Miss Sterling. I know about the fire, the insurance denial, the mounting debts. I know you're facing bankruptcy and the loss of everything you've worked for. I'm offering you a solution." Victoria felt heat rise in her cheeks. "You investigated me?" "Due diligence. If I'm going to trust someone with bringing my child into the world, I need to know everything about them. Your medical history is excellent. Your intelligence is evident from your culinary training and business plans, and your determination in building your restaurant despite numerous obstacles suggests the kind of character I want passed on to my heir." The clinical way he described her made Victoria's skin crawl, but she couldn't deny the logic behind his approach. "What exactly are you looking for in return for this generous offer?" Adrian leaned forward slightly, his expression intensifying. "I want a child. My child. Conceived naturally, carried to term by someone I trust to take care of themselves during pregnancy. After birth, the child would be legally mine, though you would have reasonable visitation rights if desired. And the conception part?"
Victoria
forced herself to ask, though her cheeks burned with embarrassment. "One night. Clinical if you prefer, though I've found that approach often proves unsuccessful. The arrangement would be whatever you're comfortable with, within the bounds of achieving our goal." Victoria studied his face, searching for any sign of the predatory behavior she had expected from such a proposal. Instead, she found only calm professionalism and something else, something that looked almost like loneliness in his gray eyes. The decision, why? The question slipped out before Victoria could stop. Herself? Why not find someone the traditional way? Date, fall in love, get married, have children like normal people? Adrian's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. "Because traditional relationships require emotional investment that I'm not prepared to make. My company demands complete focus. And I've found that romantic entanglements tend to complicate both personal and professional objectives. This arrangement provides clarity and defined expectations for both parties." "That sounds incredibly cold," Victoria observed. "Perhaps, but it's honest. I won't make promises I can't keep or pretend feelings I don't have. What I can offer is financial security, excellent medical care during pregnancy, and a legally binding contract that protects your interests as well as mine." Victoria stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city sprawling below. Somewhere down there were the ashes of her dreams, the ruins of everything she had worked for. Up here was a man offering her the chance to rebuild, to create something even greater than what she had lost. "I need time to think," she said finally, not turning around. "Of course, take all the time you need." Adrian joined her at the window, careful to maintain a respectful distance. "But Miss Sterling, consider this. Sometimes the most unconventional paths lead to the most extraordinary destinations." Victoria felt his presence beside her like heat from a fire, warm and dangerous. When she finally turned to meet his gaze, she saw something flicker in those steel-gray eyes. Something that suggested this arrangement might prove far more complicated than either of them anticipated.
"I'll leave you."
"I'll have an answer for you within the week," she said, gathering her purse with hands that trembled only slightly. "I look forward to hearing from you," Adrian replied, his voice softer than before, as Victoria left his office. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing at the edge of a precipice, about to make a decision that would change everything. The question was whether she was brave enough to jump. The contract signed, Victoria stared at the legal document spread across her kitchen table, its formal language making her stomach twist with anxiety. After 5 sleepless nights of deliberation, she had made her choice. The contract was comprehensive, protecting both parties while outlining every detail of their unusual arrangement. Her lawyer had been shocked, but admitted the terms were exceptionally favorable to Victoria. Alina sat beside her, offering silent support as Victoria picked up the pen with trembling fingers. "You don't have to do this," her friend whispered. "One last time." "Yes, I do," Victoria replied, her voice steadier than she felt. With a deep breath, she signed her name at the bottom of the page, officially agreeing to carry Adrian Blackwell's child in exchange for $2 million and the chance to rebuild her shattered dreams. Her phone buzzed immediately with a text from James Morrison confirming receipt of the signed contract. "Mr. Blackwell requests your presence tonight at 8 p.m. The address is attached. A car will collect you at 7:30. Victoria's heart hammered against her ribs. Tonight, after all the negotiations and medical examinations, tonight would be the night that changed everything. She had undergone thorough health screenings, fertility testing, and psychological evaluation. Everything had checked out perfectly. There were no more delays, no more reasons to postpone the inevitable. "I should go get ready," Victoria said. Standing on unsteady legs, Alina grabbed her hand. "Victoria, you know you can change your mind right up until the last moment, right? Contract or no contract. If you're not comfortable, you can walk away." Victoria squeezed her friend's hand gratefully. "I know, but I won't. This is my chance to have everything I've ever wanted. I just have to get through one night." The penthouse, Adrian's penthouse, occupied the entire top floor of the most exclusive building in the city. As the private elevator carried Victoria upward, she tried to calm her racing pulse. She had chosen a simple black dress, elegant but not seductive. Wanting to maintain the professional nature of their arrangement, the doors opened directly into Adrian's living space. And Victoria gasped despite herself. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city lights twinkling like stars below. The decor was sophisticated and masculine, all clean lines and expensive materials, but somehow it felt warm rather than cold. Adrian appeared from what she assumed was the kitchen, carrying 2 glasses of wine. He had changed from his usual business attire into dark jeans and a white button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing strong forearms. The casual look made him seem more approachable, more human. "Victoria," he said, offering her one of the glasses. "Thank you for coming. Gosh, I know this situation is unusual for both of us." She accepted the wine gratefully, needing something to do with her nervous hands. "It's beautiful up here. The view is incredible. I find it peaceful. When business becomes overwhelming, I come here to think." Adrian gestured toward the seating area. "Shh. Please, make yourself comfortable. We don't need to rush anything." They sat on opposite ends of a plush sofa, the space between them feeling charged with unspoken tension. Victoria sipped her wine, a rich red that probably cost more than her monthly rent used to be, and tried to think of something to say. "Tell me about your restaurant," Adrian said, seeming to sense her nervousness. "What made you want to become a chef?" The unexpected personal question caught Victoria off guard. "My grandmother. She taught me that food was love made tangible. Every dish tells a story, creates a memory. I wanted to give people that experience, that connection." Adrian's expression softened. "She sounds like a remarkable woman." She was. "She died when I was 22, just before I graduated culinary school. The restaurant was my way of keeping her memory alive." Victoria found herself relaxing as she talked about her passion. "Every recipe I created was inspired by something she taught me, some technique or flavor combination she showed me when I was little, and now you'll be able to do that again, on an even grander scale," Adrian said, his voice gentle. "Your grandmother would be proud." The kindness in his tone surprised Victoria. This wasn't the cold, calculating businessman she had expected. This was a man who seemed genuinely interested in her dreams and aspirations. The unexpected connection. The evening progressed. Their conversation flowed more naturally than Victoria had imagined possible. Adrian spoke about his company, his vision for revolutionizing technology to improve people's lives. He was passionate and articulate, his eyes lighting up when he described his latest projects. What about family? Victoria found herself asking, "Do you have anyone you're close to?" Adrian's expression darkened slightly. "My parents died in a car accident when I was 15. I was raised by my grandfather, a brilliant but emotionally distant man who taught me that success was the only thing that mattered. I suppose that's why I've never prioritized personal relationships." Victoria felt a pang of sympathy for the lonely teenager he must have been. "That sounds incredibly difficult. I'm sorry for your loss." "It was a long time ago," Adrian said, but Victoria could hear the old pain in his voice. "My grandfather did the best he could, but he wasn't built for nurturing. He taught me to be strong, independent, focused on goals rather than feelings. Is that why you want a child? To do things differently than how you were raised?" Adrian was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the city lights.
Apps.
"I want to create something lasting, something beyond just business success. I want to give a child the opportunities I had, but with more warmth, more emotional security." The vulnerability in his admission touched something deep in Victoria's chest. This man wasn't the heartless corporate machine she had imagined. He was someone who had been hurt and was trying to heal those wounds by creating a better future. "Should probably," Victoria began, then stopped, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. "Should," Adrian agreed, standing and offering her his hand. "But Victoria, I want you to know that tonight doesn't have to be clinical or uncomfortable. We're two adults entering into this arrangement willingly. There's no reason it can't be pleasant for both of us." Victoria took his hand, surprised by how right it felt when his fingers closed around hers. "I've never done anything like this before." "Neither have I," Adrian admitted as he led her toward the bedroom. "Despite what you might think, I don't make a habit of arrangements like this." The night that changed everything, Adrian's bedroom was as elegant as the rest of the penthouse, with a massive bed facing those same incredible windows. Soft lighting created an intimate atmosphere that was far removed from the sterile, clinical encounter Victoria had imagined. Adrian turned to face her, his gray eyes searching her face. "Are you certain about this? You can still stop if you've changed your mind." Victoria looked up at him, taking in the strong line of his jaw, the unexpected gentleness in his expression. The way he was clearly fighting his own desire in order to give her one last chance to back out. In that moment, she realized that her feelings about this arrangement had shifted dramatically from that first day in his office. "I'm certain," she said softly. Adrian reached up to cup her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing across her cheekbones. "You're beautiful," he murmured, and she could hear the surprise in his voice, as if the words had escaped without permission. When he kissed her, it was nothing like the mechanical encounter she had steeled herself for. His lips were warm and gentle, coaxing, rather than demanding. Victoria found herself responding, her hands moving to rest against his chest, feeling his heart beating as rapidly as her own. What followed was a revelation that shook Victoria to her core. Adrian touched her with reverent attention, as if she were something precious, rather than simply a means to an end. His hands explored her body with patient thoroughness, learning what made her gasp and arch against him. When he finally moved above her, his eyes never left her face, watching for any sign of discomfort or reluctance. What he found instead was desire, real and unmistakable, reflecting back at him. "Victoria," he whispered her name like a prayer as they moved together, finding a rhythm that felt natural despite the artificial circumstances that had brought them to this moment. The pleasure that built between them was unexpected and overwhelming. Victoria had prepared herself for duty, for endurance, for getting through what needed to be done. She hadn't prepared for the way Adrian made her feel cherished, desired, beautiful. She hadn't prepared for the way her own body responded to his touch, craving more rather than simply enduring. When release finally claimed them both, it was with an intensity that left them both breathless and clinging to each other. Adrian buried his face in her neck, his breathing ragged against her skin. For several long moments, they remained entwined, neither willing to break the spell that had settled over them. This wasn't supposed to happen, This was supposed to be a business transaction, clean and uncomplicated. Instead, it had become something else entirely, something that threatened to change everything they thought they knew about their arrangement. The morning after, Victoria woke to sunlight streaming through the massive windows and the scent of coffee drifting from the kitchen. For a moment, she lay still, remembering every detail of the night before. Her body still hummed with satisfaction, and she could feel the places where Adrian had touched her most thoroughly. Adrian appeared in the doorway carrying a tray with breakfast and coffee. He had pulled on pajama pants but remained shirtless, and Victoria couldn't help but admire the lean muscles of his chest and shoulders in the morning light. "Good morning," he said, his voice slightly uncertain. "I thought you might be hungry." Victoria sat up, pulling the sheet around herself modestly. "Thank you, that's very thoughtful." Adrian set the tray on the bed between them, the domestic gesture feeling surprisingly intimate. "Victoria, about last night." "It was unexpected," she said quickly, not wanting him to apologize or dismiss what had happened between them. "It was perfect," Adrian said quietly, his gray eyes meeting hers. "I want you to know that whatever happens next, last night meant something to me." "You mean something to me?" Victoria's heart fluttered at his words. Hey, this was dangerous territory. Feelings that went beyond their carefully constructed agreement. But as she looked at this powerful man who seemed suddenly vulnerable in the morning light, she realized it was too late to protect her heart. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we wait and see if we succeeded in our goal," Adrian replied. "We figure out what this means for both of us." As Victoria sipped the perfect coffee he had made for her, she couldn't shake the feeling that their business arrangement had just become infinitely more complicated. The question was whether either of them was prepared for the emotional consequences of what they had started. 3 weeks later, Victoria stared at the positive pregnancy test in her trembling hands, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and terror. The plan had worked. In just over 8 months, she would give birth to Adrian Blackwell's child and receive the money that would rebuild her life. Everything should have felt perfect, yet she couldn't shake the complicated emotions that had been growing since their night together. Adrian had maintained respectful distance, sending daily texts asking about her well-being and arranging for the finest prenatal care money could buy, but he hadn't pushed for more personal contact, clearly struggling with the same confusion that plagued Victoria about where they stood with each other. "You're pregnant," Dr. Catherine Wells confirmed during Victoria's appointment, her warm smile. Professional, but genuine. "About 4 weeks along, everything looks perfectly healthy." Victoria nodded, placing a protective hand over her still flat stomach. "When should I tell Mr. Blackwell?" "Whenever you feel comfortable. Though I suspect he's been quite anxious for news, given the number of times his assistant has called to inquire about appointment scheduling." That afternoon, Victoria found herself standing outside Adrian's office building, having decided that news this important deserved to be delivered in person rather than through a sterile phone call. James Morrison looked surprised to see her but immediately ushered her up to Adrian's private office. Adrian stood when she entered, his usual composed expression betraying a flicker of concern. "Victoria, is everything all right?" "I'm pregnant," she said simply, watching as a range of emotions flickered across his face. Relief, satisfaction, and something deeper that looked remarkably like joy. "The doctor confirmed it this morning. Everything appears to be developing normally." Victoria found herself studying his reaction, searching for clues about his true feelings. Adrian moved around his desk slowly, as if approaching something fragile. "How are you feeling? Any morning sickness or discomfort?" "Just tired," Dr. Wells says that's normal." Victoria paused, then added softly, "She also said you've been calling frequently to check on me." Adrian had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I wanted to ensure you were receiving the best possible care. This pregnancy is important to me." "Just the pregnancy?" The question slipped out before Victoria could stop herself. Adrian's gray eyes met hers, and she saw something vulnerable flicker in their depths. "No," he said quietly, "not just the pregnancy." Growing closer as Victoria's pregnancy progressed, Adrian found excuses to spend more time with her. He attended every doctor's appointment, his presence both comforting and confusing. He insisted on providing her with a safer apartment, a beautiful place with a nursery already prepared with the finest baby furniture money could buy. You don't have to do all this, Victoria protested as she toured the elegant space. The contract didn't specify luxury accommodations. The contract didn't specify a lot of things, Adrian replied, watching her reaction carefully. I want to take care of you, Victoria. Both of you. The possessive note in his voice sent warmth through Victoria's chest, even as her practical mind warned her not to read too much into his kindness. This was about the baby, she reminded herself. Adrian was simply protecting his investment, but the way he looked at her during ultrasound appointments suggested otherwise. When the technician showed them their baby's first clear profile on the screen, Adrian's hand found hers and squeezed tightly, his eyes never leaving the monitor. Our child, he whispered, and Victoria's heart skipped at the word "our." Have you thought about names? Victoria asked as they left the clinic together. Adrian was quiet for a moment. I had a sister who died in the same accident as my parents. Her name was Isabella. If it's a girl, I'd like to honor her memory. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes at this unexpected glimpse into Adrian's past pain. Isabella is beautiful, and if it's a boy, I was hoping you might have suggestions. This should be a decision we make together. The word together hung between them. Heavy with implications, neither was quite ready to address directly. The crisis, at 7 months pregnant, Victoria was glowing with health and happiness. Her new restaurant was under construction, financed by Adrian's generous support, and she spent her days planning menus and interviewing staff. Adrian had become a constant presence in her life, his initial emotional distance gradually melting away as they prepared for their child's arrival. The night everything changed started like any other. Victoria was in her kitchen, experimenting with recipes for the new restaurant, when sharp pain suddenly lanced through her abdomen. She gasped, grabbing the counter for support as another contraction hit. No, she whispered, looking down to see blood seeping through her dress. Too early. With shaking fingers, she called Adrian's number, barely able to speak through the pain and panic. Something's wrong, she managed when he answered. The baby. Adrian's voice went deadly calm. I'm sending an ambulance. Don't move. I'll meet you at the hospital? The next several hours passed in a blur of medical procedures and terrifying uncertainty. Victoria lay in a hospital bed, monitors tracking her baby's heartbeat while doctors worked to stop her premature labor. Adrian never left her side, holding her hand through each contraction and speaking softly to both her and the baby. Dr. Wells. Adrian's voice was strained when the physician entered the room after what felt like hours of uncertainty. The bleeding has stopped, and the baby's heartbeat is strong, Dr. Wells said, bringing immediate relief to the tense room. But Victoria needs complete bed rest for the remainder of the pregnancy. Any stress or physical activity could trigger more complications. Whatever she needs, Adrian said immediately.
What?
The best care, private nurses, anything. Actually, doctor. Wells continued. What she needs most is emotional support and stress-free environment. The next 2 months are critical. The revelation that night, as Victoria dozed fitfully in her hospital bed, Adrian sat beside her, wrestling with emotions he had spent his entire adult life avoiding. The thought of losing either Victoria or their baby had terrified him in ways that business failures never could. Somewhere along the way, this woman had become infinitely more important to him than their contract had ever specified. When Victoria stirred awake, she found Adrian watching her with an expression she had never seen before. Raw, unguarded, completely vulnerable.
Oh.
How are you feeling? He asked softly. Scared, Victoria admitted. Adrian, if something happens to the baby, nothing is going to happen, he said firmly, bringing her hand to his lips to press a gentle kiss to her palm. I won't let anything happen to either of you. This isn't your fault, you know, Victoria said, studying his face. You don't have to blame yourself for every crisis. Adrian's laugh was bitter. I've spent my entire life controlling everything around me, and the one time it truly matters, I'm completely powerless. You're not powerless. You're here. You've been here through everything, even when the contract didn't require it. Why Adrian was quiet for so long that Victoria thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because I love you. I love both of you. I know that wasn't part of our agreement, and I know it complicates everything. I can't pretend anymore that this is just business. Victoria felt tears slip down her cheeks. Adrian, I know you didn't sign up for my feelings, he continued, his words tumbling out as if a dam had burst. I know you have every right to walk away once the baby is born and start fresh with your restaurant. But I had to tell you the truth. You deserve to know that what started as a contract became something real for me. Victoria reached up to Cup, his face feeling the slight tremor in his jaw. You impossible, wonderful man. Do you really think I've been going through this pregnancy feeling nothing for you? Adrian's eyes widened with something that looked dangerously like hope. Victoria, I love you too, she whispered. I've been fighting it for months, telling myself it was just hormones or gratitude. But Adrian, I love you, not just as the father of my child, but as the man who brings me coffee every morning and remembers my grandmother's stories and holds my hand through doctor's appointments. The new beginning 2 months later, Isabella Rose Blackwell made her entrance into the world. Healthy and perfect, with her father's gray eyes and her mother's determined chin, Adrian cried when he held his daughter for the first time, all of his careful control crumbling in the face of pure love. She's perfect, he whispered, looking from the baby to Victoria with wonder. You're both perfect. Victoria watched this powerful man reduced to tears by the tiny life in his arms, and felt her heart expand with more love than she had ever thought possible. Adrian, she said softly, what happens now? The contract is fulfilled. Adrian carefully placed Isabella in her mother's arms, then sat on the edge of the hospital bed facing both of his girls. I have a new proposal for you, he said with a small smile. Victoria asked with mock suspicion. Different kind of agreement. One that involves rings and vows and spending the rest of our lives together. One that makes us a real family, not just business partners who happen to fall in love. Victoria felt fresh tears spill down her cheeks. Are you proposing to me in a hospital room while I'm still in a medical gown? I'm proposing to you everywhere and always, Adrian said, producing a small velvet box from his jacket. I'm proposing. In hospital rooms and restaurants and boardrooms and anywhere else you'll have me. Victoria Sterling, will you marry me? Will you let me love you and Isabella for the rest of my life? Yes. Victoria laughed through her tears. Yes, you ridiculous romantic. Though I should warn you, I come with very expensive tastes in restaurants now. I'll buy you a dozen restaurants, Adrian promised, slipping the ring onto her finger before kissing her deeply. I'll buy you anything you want, as long as you stay with me. As Victoria looked at her new family, her daughter sleeping peacefully in her arms, and her fiancé gazing at them both with undisguised adoration, she realized that sometimes the most unconventional beginnings led to the most extraordinary love. Stories their contract had been fulfilled, but their real life together was just beginning. And this time, the only terms that mattered were trust, love, and the promise of forever. Epilogue, 5 years later. Victoria stood in the kitchen of Sterling and Blackwell, most successful restaurant chain on the East Coast, watching her husband teach their daughter how to crack eggs for their grandmother's famous flan recipe. 2 more Blackwell children played at their feet, and another was on the way. Remember, Isabella? Gentle touches, Adrian said patiently, as their 5-year-old concentrated intensely on her task. Cooking is about love and care. Victoria smiled, her hand resting on her growing belly. Adrian had kept his promise to give their children the emotional warmth he had never received, and watching him with them never failed to make her heart overflow with gratitude. How's my favorite chef feeling today? Adrian asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind and nuzzling her neck. Lucky, Victoria replied, leaning back against his chest. Incredibly, impossibly lucky. What had started as a desperate deal between strangers had become the greatest love story of their lives. And every day, Victoria thanked whatever force of the universe had brought them together. Even under the most unlikely circumstances. Sometimes the best contracts were the ones you rewrote with your heart.